Bo-Katan and Din go on a romantic date, and at the end of this date, something extremely important happens between them. Last night, we got Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 6, Guns for Hire, and it is jam-packed with BoDin content. We have a ton to go over in today's video, so smash like, strap in, and get ready for the ride. BoDin for the win, this is the way. So before we can dive into the Bo-Din stuff, let's go over the intro to the episode real quick. So the episode opens up where we're on a ship controlled by some Quarren, and we find out that this Quarren lady is carrying a Mon Calamari who is of royal blood, and that's when we get introduced to Axe and Vernado, the Mandalorians that Bo-Katan kind of was originally with, some of them in season 2, and we find out that they were hired to get this noble back to his rightful family. So we've got this kind of little love story between them, and the Quorum surrender the Mon Calamari prince over, and yeah, that's basically how the episode opens. So that's where the episode cuts to Bo-Katan, Din, and Grogu in Bo-Katan's starship, and they're arriving on this planet, and they're heading towards the Mandalorian fleet that Bo-Katan informs that Axe is now in command of this fleet. It's kind of a large fleet, but that's when their ship gets taken control via the local government of this planet, and they get roped in and informed that they are not cleared to go meet with the other Mandalorians yet. We also get a cute scene where Bo-Katan says, "I guess we're going for a ride," and she directs this to Grogu, and he makes a funny little noise, just furthering that potential narrative of her being mom to Grogu. So the ship lands itself, or rather the government controls it remotely, and it lands, and Bo-Katan and Din simultaneously in sync walk out together with Grogu behind, and it's just another scene just showcasing that chemistry between them. And they're really in sync in a lot of scenes in this episode, and we'll continue to discuss that, but they're greeted by some droids that direct them. From there, they're directed by the Imperial droids to go into a hyperlink pod, which is kind of just like a more modernized bullet train. A robot voice kind of greets them and asks for their identification. Din and Bo give them theirs, and Bo-Katan's kind of like, this is a waste of our time, we gotta get moving to talk to the fleet, and the robot's like, yeah, don't attempt to leave the vehicle, and they just get sent flying in this bullet train going extremely fast. And while they're on this kind of bullet train ride, Din and Bo-Katan are kind of making funny jokes together, joking around about this kind of unexpected situation they've been thrown into. Din's like, well, you think we might have to blast our way out of here? And she's like, oh. But the train eventually stops, and they exit the vehicle, and it appears where they've gotten out is kind of like the town center of the city, or at least it appears that way. And as they're walking out through the doors, they're just in sync again at each other's side, with Grogu following in behind, and that's where they get greeted by the presumed leaders of the town, which is a cameo of Jack Black and Lizzo. And Jack Black's like, take a little sip. They're like invited to feast and whatnot, and they're very welcome. These people seem extremely peaceful, maybe a little too peaceful at first. And they learn that Jack Black's character used to be an Imperial himself, but he, similar to Dr. Pershing, except for his spine presumably wasn't white, was able to come back to the lights and be a quote-unquote good guy. And Lizzo's character is of royal blood to this planet, and they fell in love, so they're kind of the rulers of the planet. And she also wants to see Grogu, and Grogu does a force jump over to her, and Grogu gets fed some fish-looking food. But that's when the two leaders get up and Din and Bo to follow them, and that's where they kind of get into what's actually going on with the planet and what they need help with. And they learn that there's some malfunctioning droids, and basically, a long story short, this planet is extremely peaceful, and they can't really have weapons to deal with the droids themselves, so they want Din and Bo to deal with it together for them. Once Din and Bo help them with this matter, then they'll be allowed access to go meet with that Mandalorian fleet. So in essence, they're kind of going on a date that, you know, it wasn't really planned. Definitely a sway of plans, but Din and Bo go to basically this director of security, definitely not so suspicious looking guy played by Christopher Lloyd, and he shows them of these incidents on the security cameras of the droids malfunctioning and kind of causing havoc. They ask why don't they just shut down all the droids, and they're kind of like, well, nobody on the planet works because the droids just work, so the society would kind of fall apart, and they need to get the list of the droids that are malfunctioning, and to get that list, they have to go to the lower level of the planet and speak to the Ugnaughts, who is the same species that we originally meet in the first episode ever of The Mandalorian that helped Din on his first quest that we see him on. So Bo-Katan and Din hop in an elevator together, and side note, it seems that Grogu during this time is kind of just left with the ruling group, which I find a little odd that he's not going with, like they fully trust these people, but they seemed peaceful enough. Anyhow, they go to the lower levels and meet with a bunch of Ugnaughts, and Bo-Katan tries to speak to the Ugnaughts to get their attention, and they basically ignore her, so then Din speaks to them in a way that the Ugnaughts would kind of speak, because he kind of learned this, supposedly, that original Ugnaught quill, and he basically just has to tack on the word "I have spoken" and speak in a serious manner to get their attention. They talk for a bit, and they eventually give the list of droids that are malfunctioning, and they leave the upper levels and head to what's supposed to be probably the next incident, which is at a loading docks, which is just a bunch of super battle droids that are carrying crates. And that Bo-Katan's kind of talking to the regular battle droid, and the battle droid's kind of like, yeah, I wouldn't mess around with these. They were originally, you know, for war, obviously. And then Din, the husband, silly monkey brain power vibes, just starts kicking said droids to see if they get any reaction. And then after he kicks like the third or fourth one, it kind of goes ballistic. Din gets freaking smacked in the face hard as heck and stops what it's doing and makes a run for it. Which, by the way, I do not think that B2 super battle droids can move this fast, but that's just me. That's my critique. But then a chase scene ensues with Bo-Katan and Din chasing down this super battle droid. It goes for a little bit. The battle droid is like throwing stuff, being a danger to society, and then Din cuts him off, flies through a window, and knocks him over. And as he's about to take him down, Bo-Katan beats him to it and has Din's back and puts the finishing shots in the super battle droid and kind of gives Din a certain look, a cheeky smile on her face of sorts. So on the broken droid's body, they find this tab thing that is basically has an address to a droid bar. So they go there next to continue their investigation. As they walk into this bar, the music's kind of going and the droids are just kind of jamming out, which I think is funny. But as soon as the droids realize there are humans there, they cut the music and everyone's kind of staring at them. Din and Bo go to the bartender and question him. And we know Din, he's not a big fan of droids. So he uses some aggressive negotiation tactics while Bo-Katan is trying to be more civil with it, and Bo-Katan is getting just a tad bit annoyed with Din here, a little chastising him a little bit that he's not helping here with the situation, and just a little bit of, you know, playful chastising, similar to how we would see between kind of just any other normal couple. So after a bit more questioning, they find out that the droids are actually concerned that they're going to be replaced, and their whole objective in life is to serve humans. And this is a really crucial scene where the bartender droid says that life is so short and that humans don't ask for much. And when he says that, Bo-Katan looks to Din and Din looks to Bo-Katan. Just a really touching and heartwarming moment between them. So the bartender takes them to the back, and this is where they find out that the list that they brought of the malfunctioning droids all were drinking on the same batch of nepentane, which is like an oil type drink. That's the only drink that's served there, but that same batch, they were all the exact same. So there was some kind of connection between that batch that was making them malfunction. So they exit the bar and head to a lab. So at the lab, they get this nepentane studied, and as this is going on, a droid that was exposed to it malfunctions and shoots lasers at them. Din smashes it with the Darksaber, and upon further investigation, they realize that nepentane has a nanobots in it that's giving the droids a script to malfunction. And this is where they reveal and find out that the person that ordered this was the Commissioner Hellgates, and that this is highly illegal and was not reported. So they head back to where the Commissioner was, and Bo informs him that they have have questions to ask him regarding the droid. And when he realizes he's been found out, he opens the kill switch and puts his hand over the red button and informs that if he hits it, that all of the droids on the planet will be converted to battle droids and will attack everyone. The commissioner goes on a long rant about how he wouldn't bend the knee to the Republic, the Empire, and certainly not them. And this is where Bo-Katan realizes he's a separatist, and the commissioner even mentions Count Dooku and how he was a visionary, and this speech is cut short when Bo-Katan zaps him with a dart, putting him unconscious, stopping the threat for now. And after that, we cut to a very interesting larva insect game that the royals are playing with Grogu. The commissioner is brought in chains and admits of his crimes to the family, and he gets sent into exile. So then the royal lady, played by Lizzo, gifts the passage to Bo and Din to be able to go and see the Mandalorian fleet, and she also gifts them the highest honor, the key to Plazier, allowing them to return to this planet whenever. So Din picks up Grogu, and then they round up, and also side note, Grogu gets knighted or whatever that means. I don't know why, kind of random, but then they hop back on the bullet train and then head over to where the Mandalorian fleet is stationed, that is in command by Axe. So they pull up on them, and there are a lot of Mandalorians here at this fleet, and Axe inquires to Bo-Katan if she has come to rejoin, and she's like, no, I'm here to reclaim command of my fleet. And Axe is like, well, it's not your fleet anymore, it's my fleet. And there's a little bit of back and forth, and then Bo-Katan walks closer and says, then I challenge you in combat for leadership. Just a very classic Mandalorian way of doing things. He thinks for a little bit and accepts the challenge, and there's some epic music going on between them, and then an epic fight between them ensues. The fight kind of goes back and forth. I honestly wasn't sure who was gonna win, and it seems like blasters aren't allowed, but pretty much everything else win. I mean, I saw there's flamethrowers going on, but they land on top of the ship, and then Bo-Katan flings Axe off with her grappling hook, and from there she gets on top of him and puts her knife to his throat and says, do you yield? He doesn't actually yield. He basically just says that Bo-Katan will never be the true Mandalorian leader, and that she needs to challenge Din because she needs the Darksaber. And Bo is like, enough Mandalorian blood has been spilt to counter that. Axe kind of insults Din by saying he doesn't have any true Mandalorian blood in his veins, and this clearly upsets Bo-Katan. Like, this has struck a nerve that Axe is going after Din because he's as much of a Mandalorian as any of them, and that's what she goes on, and that the Mandalorians of old took the creed like this, so he, in some ways, he's more Mandalorian than them. Axe still counters that the leader must have the Darksaber, and that's when Din cuts in and says, then she will have it. And this part is huge. Not to toot my own horn, I kind of called this on a stream, and I know some of the other members in the Discord, shout out to Hazard, called this, but the Darksaber was Bo-Katan's by right as soon as she defeated the General Grievous knockoff that captured Din and took possession of the Darksaber. And, you know, we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, but it's cool that they actually made sure to follow this detail, and that's essentially what leads Din to give Bo the Darksaber rightfully, and the Mandalorians there agree that it is Bo-Katan's. And just, it's such a big moment between the two, showing that Din cares enough and has this connection with Bo-Katan to be willing to part ways with such an important relic as the Darksaber and give it to her, just showing that trust between them. Bo-Katan kind of reluctantly accepts it and ignites it, but this time, rather than raising it over her head, she just ignites it low, and that's where the episode ends. And Bo-Katan is just so badass in this episode, taking on Axe. That fight's a ton of fun, and they really are setting up Queen Bo, like I've been saying, and I know many of you have been saying, so that'll be interesting to see where that goes. And man, this episode was just so packed full with so much Bo-Katan. I mean, basically the entire episode was Bo and Din together, and I had a lot of fun with it. I do wish there was a little bit more going on. I really thought we were gonna see Moff Gideon. I know a lot of you guys thought that we would see Gideon, but there's a lot to happen in these next 2 episodes. They're gonna have to be pretty wild in my opinion, but this episode is all good news for the BoDin for the win movements. If you haven't already dropped a like, make sure to drop a like. Check out the Discord and other parts of the BoDin series. I'll put a link to the Discord in the comments. I hope you guys are having a great day. Subscribe for more videos. The vast majority of you that are watching are not actually subscribed, so hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video. BoDin for the win!